That morning, she arrived as an invisible child and left as the keeper of forgotten voices. The glass-walled executive suite on the 45th floor of the Zenith Tower mirrored the arrogance of its occupants. Middle-aged men and women clad in million-dollar suits and practiced smiles waited their turn to impress Alexander Sterling, the eccentric billionaire known for turning whims into empires. Television cameras captured every move, journalists whispered speculations about the mysterious Project Babel, and investors scrutinized spreadsheets on gleaming tablets. It was the kind of environment where every word cost a fortune and every silence was worth its weight in gold. Then, amongst the corporate giants, a small, slight figure slipped through the revolving door. Worn sneakers, jeans with handcrafted patches at the hem, a t-shirt far too simple for this temple of capitalism. 11 years of life carried on thin shoulders, yet a gaze that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. "Lost, little one?" the security guard asked, leaning down with a paternal smile. "Your parents must be looking for you." "I'm not lost. I'm here for the job," she replied, with a naturalness that cut through the air like a sharpened blade. A murmur rippled through the room like a hive of agitated bees. Discreet laughter escaped from lipstick-stained mouths and perfectly groomed gray mustaches. Alexander Sterling, seated in his Italian leather armchair, observed the scene with that sardonic smile that had built his empire. The same smile he used to dismantle competitors and seduce investors. "A child," he murmured to his personal assistant. "In my selection for the most important position in the company." What a delightful joke. But there was something in the girl's eyes that intrigued him. Perhaps it was the complete absence of intimidation or the way she stood in the center of that hostile universe without showing the slightest discomfort. Sterling had built his fortune reading people, detecting weaknesses and hidden potentials, and this child was an anomaly. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice echoing through the room. "Ana Flores," she replied, pronouncing each syllable with a quiet pride that no diploma could bestow. "Ana Flores," Sterling repeated, savoring the name like a rare wine. "And tell me, Miss Flores, what could a child of, how old?" 11. What could an 11-year-old offer to my revolutionary global communication project? Anna took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into deep waters. Her gaze swept across the room, observing the skeptical faces, the condescending smiles, the electronic devices blinking like the eyes of electronic predators. "I speak 9 languages," she said, with a calm gleam in her eyes that contrasted with the storm of disbelief around her. The laughter that escaped Sterling was involuntary, like the bark of a surprised dog. He loved challenges, especially those that promised entertainment at the expense of naive optimists. He decided to play with his new source of amusement. 9 languages, is it? He leaned forward, like a cat about to toy with a mouse. "How impressive. Say something in Icelandic then." "Ef vilt skilja heimin, lust, thu abernin." Anna pronounced each word with a fluency that made the air in the room grow denser. Sterling blinked twice. He had studied Icelandic in college, decades ago, long enough to recognize the perfection of the girl's pronunciation, and Arabic. His voice had lost some of its arrogance. "Alanam layak taj mazidin min amel, bel mazidin min afim." The words flowed like golden honey, carrying a melody that transformed the room into a silent mosque. The laughter had completely dissolved. The tone shifted like the colors of the sky during an eclipse. Everyone fell silent, even the journalists had stopped scribbling in their notebooks. The cameras kept recording, but the operators seemed mesmerized. "Chinese?" Sterling asked, his voice now a respectful whisper. "Danan, Yuyan's ton shin yin chalia." Anna smiled for the first time, a smile that illuminated the room like the sunrise over snow-capped mountains. The silence was now reverent, sacred. Sterling felt his heart accelerate in a way he hadn't experienced in years, since the days when discovering something new was still possible. But it was when Anna began to speak in a language that none of the brilliant minds present could recognize that the real mystery began. The words that came from her mouth were like the songs of extinct birds, melodious and impossible, carrying an antiquity that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the building. Sterling felt a shiver run down his spine, as if ancestors were whispering in his ear. "What? What is that?" he asked, furrowing his brow in an expression his subordinates knew well. That's how he looked when he found something his money couldn't buy. "An extinct language. The language of the Awagwaha," Anna replied naturally, as if explaining the color of the sky. "I learned it from my grandmother. She was the last fluent speaker." Sterling rose from his armchair, as if he had been struck by an invisible blow to the stomach. His face lost its color, turning into the pallor of someone who sees ghosts in broad daylight. With trembling hands, he pulled out his smartphone, navigated through his files until he found a PDF he kept as a sacred relic. He opened the document and read a sentence aloud, pronouncing each word with the care of someone handling ancient crystal. It was exactly the same sentence Anna had spoken moments before. The document was an ancestral manuscript, preserved by his deceased wife, anthropologist Dr. Helena Sterling, who had dedicated her life to the study of extinct indigenous languages. Helena had found this manuscript on an expedition to the Amazon, 3 months before she died in a plane crash that also took her dreams of decoding those mysterious symbols. "How did you—" Sterling couldn't finish the question. His voice cracked like tempered glass under excessive pressure. "My grandmother knew her," Anna said with the simplicity of someone talking about the weather. "Your wife, too. They were friends before the tragedy. I was born in the same village where your Helena collected this manuscript." The billionaire's eyes filled with tears he hadn't shed in 15 years, not since Helena's funeral. The old pain pulsed again, like a wound believed healed. That phrase Anna had uttered, which for decades had remained an undeciphered enigma, said, "She still lives in the words we leave behind." The entire hall seemed frozen in time. Executives who seconds before were calculating profit opportunities now stared at a child who had just accomplished the impossible. For the first time in years, Sterling wasn't thinking about money, metrics, or market projections. He found himself facing a linguistic, cultural, profoundly human miracle. In that sacred moment of silence, Anna closed her eyes and allowed her mind to travel back in time, as she often did when loneliness weighed on her slender shoulders. She was 6 years old when her grandmother, Yera, first told her about the woman with golden hair who had arrived in the village like a lost butterfly. Helena Sterling appeared on a tropical rainy afternoon, carrying strange equipment and a smile that illuminated even the darkest huts. "She wanted to learn our language," whispered Grandma Yera, while braiding Anna's hair on the wooden porch that creaked under the weight of memories. "Not to study it like the other white people did. She wanted to feel the words, to let them live inside her." Anna perfectly remembered the smell of medicinal herbs that always accompanied her grandmother, the rough texture of her hands calloused from working the land, the way her eyes became distant when she spoke of the ancient times. "Helena was different, my granddaughter," continued Grandma Yera, her voice carrying the weight of someone guarding precious secrets. "She cried when I taught her the last lullaby of our tribe. She cried because she knew that when I died, those words would die with me." That's when Anna discovered her gift. It wasn't just an ability to memorize sounds or reproduce accents. It was something deeper, more ancestral. She could absorb languages like the earth absorbs rain, allowing each new language to find a sacred place within her soul. Portuguese came naturally, like breathing. Spanish arrived through the telenovelas they watched on the village's broken television. English was born from the books Helena had left for her grandmother as a farewell gift. French, Italian, German, each new language was like discovering a new color in the rainbow, but it was the Awagwaha language that became her greatest responsibility. Grandma Yera taught her not only the words, but the feelings each word carried, the stories that lived between the syllables, the spirits that inhabited each sound. "When I'm gone, you will be the guardian," said the grandmother on a night when the stars seemed especially close, "not just of the words, but of the souls they carry." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Back in the present, Anna opened her eyes and found Sterling watching her with an expression that mixed reverence and despair. He had approached without her noticing, and now he was kneeling before her, like a king before a prophetess. "Tell me about Helena," he whispered, his voice broken with emotion. "Tell me what my wife found in your village." Anna studied the face of the man who minutes before saw her as mere entertainment. She now saw the lines of sadness around his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly, the vulnerability that all his money couldn't hide. "She found a family," Anna replied gently. "Grandma Yera adopted her into her heart. She said Helena had an indigenous soul trapped in a butterfly's body. She learned our language not with her head, but with her heart." Sterling closed his eyes, allowing the girl's words to paint pictures he had been trying to reconstruct for 15 years. Helena had left for that expedition promising to return with revolutionary discoveries. She returned different, deeper, carrying a serenity he had never seen before. On her last night in the village, Anna continued, her voice taking on the tone of a lullaby. "Grandma Yera taught her our most sacred prayer, the prayer that only the last speaker can transmit. Helena promised that one day she would send someone to learn, to ensure that our voice wouldn't be lost in silence. And you," Sterling opened his eyes, understanding and astonishment mixing in his gaze, "you are that person." Anna nodded simply. "Grandma Yera told me about the butterfly woman's husband. She said he built bridges of money, but that he needed to learn to build bridges of words." The hall remained in absolute silence. Investors, journalists, candidates, all had become the audience of a meeting that transcended any corporate project. Some discreetly wiped away tears, others held their breath as if witnessing a miracle. Sterling rose slowly, like a man rediscovering how to walk. He walked to the panoramic window that offered a spectacular view of the city, but his eyes didn't see the skyscrapers or the traffic. They saw a simple hut in the Amazon, where his Helena had found something that all his empire couldn't provide: purpose. "Gentlemen," he said, turning to the audience, "for 15 years I have searched for someone who could translate my wife's last work. I spent fortunes on linguists, anthropologists, experts in ancient codes. None could decipher a single word." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle on those present like golden dust. "And today, an 11-year-old girl brought me not just the translation, but the very soul of those words." Anna felt the weight of everyone's gaze upon her. For a moment, the confident child faltered, remembering she was far from home, in a city where people hurried past too quickly to hear the birds sing. But then, she remembered her grandmother's words: "Courage isn't the absence of fear, my dear. It's carrying the fear in your heart, and still doing what needs to be done." "Mr. Sterling," Anna said, her voice echoing through the hall like a church bell, "my grandmother Yera told me that your Helena didn't die. She transformed into all the words she collected, into all the stories she preserved, and now she lives in me, in you, in anyone who cares to hear the forgotten voices." At this point, allow me to pause the narrative to share something important with you. If this story is touching your heart, if you believe in the power of words to connect different worlds, I invite you to join our community, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, because I will be regularly sharing stories like this, narratives that celebrate cultural diversity, that honor the keepers of ancestral traditions, and that prove that humanity's most precious treasures often come wrapped in the simplest packages. You're not just subscribing to a channel, you're becoming part of a global network of people who believe that every voice matters, every story deserves to be told. Now, let's continue discovering what happened when Anna revealed the true reason for her presence in that hall. Sterling slowly walked back to where Anna stood, and for the first time since entering the hall, she seemed small again, but it was a smallness that emanated power, like a seed carrying within it the potential of an entire forest. "Anna Flores," he said, pronouncing her name like a prayer. "You didn't come here by chance, did you?" "No, sir," she replied, her small hands clasped in front of her. "I came because Grandma Yera appeared to me in a dream last week. She told me it was time to fulfill the promise made to the butterfly woman." "What promise?" Anna took a deep breath before answering, like someone preparing to reveal a secret kept for years. The promise that dead languages wouldn't die alone, that there would always be someone to carry them forward, to give voice to those who can no longer speak. It was then that Sterling understood the true magnitude of what he was witnessing. His global communication project, which had begun as just another corporate ambition, was transforming before his eyes into something much greater. Anna wasn't just an exceptional candidate, she was the answer to a question he didn't know he was asking. "Will you work with me?" he asked, but the question sounded more like a plea than a job offer. Anna tilted her head to the side, studying him with that precocious wisdom that seemed at odds with her age. "I will, but on my terms." A surprised murmur ran through the hall. No one, absolutely no one, had ever dared to impose conditions on Alexander Sterling, but he just smiled, not the calculated smile from before, but something genuine, almost childlike. "State your terms, guardian of voices. First, your project can't be about making money, it has to be about saving languages that are disappearing." "Agreed." "Second, half of every resource you invest has to go to the communities that still preserve these languages. They can't just be studied, they need to be honored." "Agreed." "Third." Anna paused, her eyes becoming distant like her grandmother's when she remembered the past. "One day I will return to my village, and when that happens, you will continue the work, not out of obligation, but because you will have learned that there are treasures in the world that are priceless." Sterling extended his hand to Anna, who shook it with the seriousness of someone sealing a sacred pact. "I accept all your conditions, Anna Flores, but I have a question." "What is it? Why do you trust me? You don't even know me." Anna smiled again, and this time, her smile carried all the ancestral wisdom that Grandma Yura had planted in her soul. "Because Grandma Yura taught me to read hearts, not just words, and your heart has been crying out for 15 years, searching for Helena. Today she spoke through me, and you finally managed to hear." The tears that Sterling had held back throughout the conversation finally escaped. They weren't tears of sadness, but of relief, of encounter, of redemption. For the first time since Helena's death, he felt he had a purpose that went beyond accumulating wealth. The following months transformed not only the Sterling Company, but the entire global communication industry. The original project was completely overhauled. Instead of pursuing commercial efficiency, it became an unprecedented cultural preservation initiative. Anna worked tirelessly alongside Sterling, traveling the world to find the last speakers of endangered languages. Together, they created a digital platform that not only documented these languages, but allowed communities to teach them to the world. Every story collected, every song preserved, every prayer documented was treated as a sacred heritage of humanity. Anna became not only the youngest director in world corporate history, but also the bridge between worlds that seemed irreconcilable, the world of technology and the world of ancestral tradition. Under her guidance, engineers created algorithms capable of preserving not only words, but intonations, emotions, cultural contexts. Sterling discovered that leading with purpose was infinitely more rewarding than leading with ambition. The company thrived in ways he'd never imagined, not just financially, but in its social impact. Universities around the world began using the platform for anthropological studies. Indigenous children reconnected with languages their great-grandparents spoke. Families separated by urbanization found ways to keep their traditions alive. But perhaps the most profound transformation happened in Sterling himself. He began learning some of the languages Anna mastered, not out of commercial necessity, but out of genuine curiosity. He discovered that each language offered a unique perspective on existence, a different way of perceiving the world. One spring afternoon, exactly 2 years after their first meeting in the glass-walled atrium, Anna found Sterling in the company library, poring over manuscripts Helena had collected during her expeditions. He was trying to decipher a lullaby in Tupi Guarani, Having trouble? Anna asked, approaching with her characteristic light step. Always, Sterling laughed, looking up from the papers. But I've discovered that the difficulty is part of the beauty. Each word I manage to understand feels like a small miracle. Anna sat beside him, and with infinite patience, began to teach him the correct pronunciation. Her voice transformed the corporate library into an Amazonian hut, filling the air with melodies that connected present and past. Anna, Sterling said, after they finished the lesson, you know that the day will come when you'll fulfill your third condition, don't you? I know, she replied without hesitation. Grandma Yura visits me in my dreams sometimes. She says the village needs me, that there are children there who also have the gift and need to learn how to use it. Will you miss all this? He gestured around, referring to the corporate empire they had built together. Anna was silent for a moment, contemplating the question with the seriousness she devoted to all important matters. I won't miss the buildings or the meetings, she finally said. But I will miss you. I'll miss seeing your eyes light up every time we discover a new language. I'll miss knowing that Helena still lives through our work. Sterling felt his heart tighten, but it was a good pain, like the one you feel when you witness the growth of someone you love. And I will continue the work, he said with conviction, not out of obligation, as you said, but because I've learned that there are treasures in the world that are priceless. Anna smiled, remembering the 11-year-old girl who had entered that atrium 2 years before. She was still the same person, but now she carried the certainty that she had fulfilled the first part of her mission. The forgotten voices were no longer alone. They had an army of people dedicated to preserving them. There's something I never told you, Anna said, playing with one of the pages of the manuscript. What? The last thing Grandma Yura said to me in a dream, the night before I came here for the first time. Sterling waited patiently, learning to respect the contemplative rhythms Anna had inherited from her grandmother. She said that Helena was very proud of you, that you had learned to build the most important bridge of all. What bridge? The bridge between who you were and who you should always have been. At that moment, Sterling understood that Anna had not only changed his company or his projects, she had changed his soul. She had transformed a man obsessed with achievements into a guardian of ancestral legacies. She had taught a billionaire that true wealth lay in human connections, in preserved stories, in honored traditions. 3 months later, at a ceremony that brought together representatives of indigenous communities from all over the world, Anna officially announced her decision to return to the village. It wasn't a farewell, it was a graduation. She had planted seeds that would continue to grow even in her absence. In her farewell speech, broadcast live to millions of people, Anna spoke in the 9 languages she had mastered as a child, and in 15 more that she had learned during her 2 years of work. Each sentence echoed like a prayer. Each word carried the weight of entire civilizations. I learned that being a guardian of voices doesn't mean keeping them only for myself, she said, alternating between Portuguese and the ancestral language of the Awagwaha. It means multiplying them, planting them in new hearts, ensuring that never again will a language die in silence. Sterling, sitting in the front row, felt a mixture of pride and longing that he didn't know how to express. Anna had arrived in his life as a lost child, and was leaving as a world-renowned leader. But more importantly, she had arrived as a stranger, and was leaving as the daughter he and Helena never had. At the airport, moments before her departure, Anna hugged Sterling with the strength of someone carrying all the love in the world in their arms. Do you promise you'll keep learning new languages? She whispered. I promise. Do you promise you'll visit the village when I send an invitation? I promise. Do you promise you'll remember that Helena still lives in every word we preserve? I promise, my dear guardian. I promise everything. Anna pulled away, studied the face of the man who had become her second father, and smiled one last time before leaving. So until we meet again, bridge builder. She walked toward the gate,
her steps echoing in the terminal like an ancestral melody. Sterling watched her until she disappeared among the other passengers, carrying with her not only simple luggage, but the sacred weight of hundreds of languages she had learned to preserve. 5 years later, the Helena Sterling Foundation had become the world's largest linguistic preservation organization. Anna, now 18, ran a school in the village, where she taught indigenous children to discover and develop their own linguistic gifts. Sterling visited the village twice a year, always bringing simple gifts and taking back precious lessons about what truly matters in life. Each visit, he remembered the morning a slender girl had walked into his corporate atrium and transformed his existence. Anna had arrived as a child invisible to the world, but had left as a globally recognized guardian. More importantly, she had taught everyone that humanity's greatest treasures often come in the simplest packages, and that listening to forgotten voices is the first step to not forgetting our own humanity. And so, in words that echo between the concrete of big cities and the Amazonian huts of remote villages, the story of Ana Flores continued to be told, inspiring a new generation of guardians to protect the voices that would otherwise be lost forever in the silence of oblivion.